Wow, so nice to welcome Golf Hall of Famer Fred Couples to Questions for Cancer Research today. Fred, how are you?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thanks for having. It's taken a while, but thanks for having me on. And certainly not your fault. It's not like I'm a busy guy, but I'm glad we're on. And you know a lot of my friends, and you've interviewed a few of them, and it's kind of fun to see what you've done.
It's been a lot of fun, Freddie, and I wait a long time for you. It's so kind of you to join us today. It was great to see you playing in the PNC Championship a few weeks ago with your stepson Hunter. How was it for you guys?
Yeah, it was an absolute blast. Everyone knows that when I don't think I've ever missed watching it on TV. I know that sounds crazy, but even back when Ray Floyd who was a mentor of mine, but Lee Trevino has always said it best. It's the greatest week ever, and I don't think you're going to look for an argument from me. Hunter uh, is the greatest kid. He's a volleyball player, played a little football, and now he's devoted all of his time to volleyball because his mom and dad played. And so I don't know. In October, I sat on the couch and I said, Hunter, they asked last year. I felt like it was a little bit fresh, but they've asked again. And I'm afraid, when you think you're ready to play, they may not really want us to play because it'll be full. And so anyway, it was he and Suzanne and I on the couch. And then he kind of stared at me, like, okay. And then the next morning he woke up before school and said, I want to play. And then of course I called Alistair, my manager, and they were very excited. And, Hunter can hit a smash in volleyball and maybe not get that excited. So it was hard to tell, but a lot of people asked how nervous he was. Well, there's only 2 rounds, but the 4 best drives he hit were the 2 Pro-Am days and Saturday and Sunday. He absolutely pounded these drives. And so I went, oh my God, this is amazing. Cause I was in the group behind him in the Pro-Am and I was thinking anything could happen, and I thought that when I was 21 years old playing in a big event, anything could happen, but he really, really enjoyed it. And when it was all over, I said, how much fun was that? And he said, it was a lot of fun. So he had his best friend caddying for him, which was really, really neat to see. And he enjoyed it. He loved seeing everybody. He's seen most people on TV or maybe in the desert, like Lee Trevino, where he might come hit balls or whatever, but he really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take it you guys will be you'll be in the field again next year.
I'm planning on it. Yeah. Yes,
Awesome.
sir. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer. I think Hunter is wishes it was 2 weeks again from now. Like a regular, he wants to be on the PGA Tour. We get on a plane, he packs his clubs. He's never done anything like that. So we get there, and I said, tomorrow you got a Pro-Am tee time. He had finals that week, so we couldn't get there until late Wednesday. And so gets on the range, and he's hitting balls next to Nelly Corda. And I don't think Tiger played on Thursday, so we didn't see he and Charlie until, on the second Pro-Am day, Friday. But of course, I always want to hit next to Tiger, so Hunter was right next to me, and he got to see the man swing a few. And then we went and played, and he's excited. He's not ever going to become a golfer, like to try and make the high school team. But, he knows, and his father has also told him, Hunter, it's great for business. Keep playing golf. So Hunter and I really have not played that many rounds together. I mean, I let him play with his friends. Sometimes I think I've learned to just say, Hunter, we're going to go golf. And if I see one little thing, I might say anything. But other than that, let's just go. So we've only played maybe 15 rounds of golf before we went to Florida. And so out there, I just let him go. The guy who caddied for me, Jerry has been teaching him 3 or 4 times, not 3 or 4 years, but just before we went, just to make sure, he kind of knew situations, and it was fun.
Yeah, no, that was great. Listen, always great to see you out there. I saw you hit a few shots. You look pretty good. Is your back feeling pretty good?
Yeah, I actually felt pretty well. I had played in a little tournament in the desert at a course I built called the Plantation, and that was a 2-day thing with a practice round. So that was 3 rounds, and then I came home, and I felt like I, I it was time for me to start practicing anyway. And when I got there, I was pretty sharp, for December, late December golf. You're out here in California where the weather's great. So I was ready and I actually played pretty well. One thing I really enjoyed doing I never told Hunter that, but when we played, we made one little 8-foot par putt on the ninth hole the second day. And other than that, you're playing a scramble, but we were never really anywhere near making a bogey. And so that means when he hit a good drive, he can hit it further than I can. It just made my life easier. And we didn't hit a good drive. I'll be honest. I don't know how we would do if we were near the lead on the last day and he didn't hit a good drive. I think I'd be choking so bad to get it in play. But the scramble format is a treat. We played with Nelly Corda and Peter the first day. They were incredible. And then we played with the Immelmans the second day, and everyone loves Trevor, and his son is really a fine young kid going to Clemson. And so it was great pairings. Hunter got to meet a lot of kids, to watch Matt Kuchar's kid, who will probably be a pro someday. He got to see Daniel Trevino, who's older, but has played in this, I guess, 15 times. So it was really a treat to see him. He was the best looking kid there. I'll tell you that much. He
Nice.
is, he's a big, tall kid, loving volleyball with a really, really nice golf swing. But, I'm not being critical. He's just not a golfer. If he was, I really think we could do really, really well in that. But he's a volleyball player. And so I really like watching him play volleyball. We rarely miss a match when we're here. And oddly enough, 3 days before we really left, he was in a volleyball tournament in Las Vegas. So, I was hoping he wouldn't hurt anything or fingers, and he got through it. And we went and, the PNC is everything they say it is. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the final holes in the playoff between the Woods and Lang was really fun to watch. And I know Tiger kind of downplayed his performance, saying it was a hit and giggle type of event, but I think most of the golf world was really impressed to see him playing so well, and that he walked 18 holes both days after undergoing back surgery, in September. You were playing, so you didn't get to see him hit a whole lot, but did you get the feeling that he was doing pretty well physically?
Well, he said something to me on Friday. He said, "Hey, you're walking tomorrow, right?" And I said, "Well, I popped a little calf thing, and if I don't walk, I'll never be anywhere near Hunter. So I'm planning on." He goes, "No, you got to walk." He goes, "I've ridden before, but I feel great. I'm walking. It was cold, so we walked, Hunter and I, and then when I was done that day, John Wood and Bones both texted me and said, 'Your guy looks incredible,' and he walked." Without, I did not see him. I saw a little bit of the playoff because we were catching a flight later that night. And unfortunately, they didn't win, but we were in our room watching. We couldn't leave the TV set. And it's not like we were running late, but he played awesome. It is a hit and giggle, but, not everything's a hit and giggle for Tiger anymore. It's really, as he always says, I need the reps. Well, he looked good to me. He hit some really, really quality shots. He always does. Even when his back is 50%, he rarely mishits a shot. So I think it was exciting. He's going to tell us, even me, I texted him on Monday and I said, "Wow, what an effort, you guys. It was fun watching." Yeah, it was the same words you just said. Yeah, it was a hit and giggle. And I said, "Well, you still had to hit quality shots." He goes, "Yeah. So we talk more about Sam and Charlie than we do about him.
That's awesome. No, he looked great. What did you think of the TGL event the other night?
I thought it was the only thing I can say real fast is that I was listening to some ESPN people because it was on ESPN, and they were talking about the people that were watching, and sometimes they were a little vocal. And then the one guy said, "Well, it's kind of hard to be vocal when you're down 7-1." but that's when you could really start the ribbing. So I understand that, no one wants to lose in golf, but in these team things, I felt like, this is me speaking, it's the opening night. I thought the line that Shane Lowry had is, "I'm the new Scotty Scheffler in indoor golf." I don't even know if people have talked about that. I thought that was the funniest line maybe I've ever heard,
Yeah.
but it was kind of quiet, not much ribbing or kibitzing. And I loved the holes. I thought the holes were incredible. I can't pay much attention and reply on the greens. Some of the greens look pretty tough.
Yeah.
Maybe a little too much. But
Yeah.
again, you're hitting the ball. It's the first team. You're hitting the ball into a screen, even though it says you have 178. You're hitting an 8-iron. When you hit it on the back tier and you have a difficult putt. I thought I thought the screens were incredible. I don't know a lot of the games Hunter plays on his video, but once in a while I go into his room and I just watch, lay on the bed and watch. And I got to tell you, when he's playing games, it looks pretty amazing. I
Yeah.
thought these holes were all over the top beautiful. And I had a question for my manager, Lynn. Maybe you know. So next Tuesday they play again. Do they play a new 18 holes? Do you know? I don't know. If that's
I don't know for sure, but I get the feeling, the venues, the courses, the holes will change. But I'm not 100% sure, but I think they'll just keep changing it up. Yeah.
okay. But let me ask you, what'd you think?
I thought it was really entertaining, right? I mean, I'll be honest with you, I watched over my lifetime, I'm 60 now, I watched a ton of golf on TV. I just always enjoyed doing it as, from the time I was a little kid. But I thought it was really good because it was different. Um, and I think it's a great way to bring some new viewers in, right? Especially Hunter's generation, younger kids who look at
Yeah.
this and they identify with this, like the games they're playing. So I think it was really innovative. I give Rory and Tiger a ton of credit for thinking of this. It was the first night it got a lot of attention, but at the same time, Tiger and Rory weren't playing, so I think it was an awesome start, and I think they're onto something. I really do.
Yeah, no, I won't argue that. Hunter had volleyball at 7. So we were eating a quick little meal and it was on and he stood before he went down, to get into his room and then get in the car and drive to practice. He stood and watched, so we taped it. And we'll end up probably sitting around. He'll fly through it. But again, I would agree with you. I thought Lucas, I don't know why I say Lucas. I thought Ludwig Aberg absolutely, with his face and his looks and his swing, stole the show. I just thought he was magnificent. And for people who, have seen him play the Ryder Cup, which I saw, right in front of me. I watched how well he played. Obviously, I didn't know much about him in college, and he's pretty fresh to it, but he was incredible. He's got a swing. They could talk about that, and his team with Shane Lowry and Wyndham Clark's pretty solid team. I didn't even know, Chris, that they had 4-man teams. I'm like, well, I know Tiger's team, so they have 4. Why do these guys have 3? And I'm texting Lynn, and he says, well, because in case someone can't make it, like Lynn Roach has Sahith Thegal on one of the teams. Well, he's not playing in every one of them because some of them don't work out. So they have an extra guy. I didn't even know that. But I thought the TV did it great. I thought, again, the players are magnificent. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of can't waiting for next Tuesday because that's when, in my opinion, the big boy plays. So it kind of gives you that, little taste, and you're away for a week, and we'll see what it looks like next Tuesday.
I agree. They kind of gave you that little taste and kind of a tease, and now you got Tiger and I guess Rory probably coming in next Tuesday. So
Yeah,
that's I think they're going to get a lot of eyeballs on that.
yeah, for sure.
It's funny you talk about Ludwig's swing that looks so easy and kind of reminds me of yours. Freddie, many consider you to be among the best all-time ball strikers in the game. Your swing is amazing and really a lot of fun to watch. What do you think makes your golf swing so special and effective?
That, that's a heck of a question. And, I do get asked that a lot, and I'll be at functions and stuff. And I usually say the same thing. I know nothing about a golf swing. Like when I tell Hunter or Suzanne, my wife, a couple things, I would say the same things to Tiger Woods or Jack Nicklaus. I know nothing about a swing. I kind of know my swing, and I know it because of ball flight. So for me, when I played, I was always up there in greens and regulation. Did I drive the ball great? No, but when I did, it made my game so much easier. And when I didn't, as long as I wasn't hitting it into homes or in the water, I could play from anywhere out of the rough. So vision for me is a big, big thing. And sometimes when I'm at a clinic, I tell people that, and they don't even understand what I'm getting at. And so then I'll say, well, see the clouds up there? I just kind of look in those clouds with a 5-iron, and I know that they're kind of high in the sky, but I can fly this 5-iron at the top of that cloud or the bottom of it. Tiger always says I hit into windows. And so I kind of can relate to that because I hit into areas. And now when I watch these guys play, whether it's at the President's Cup or the Ryder Cup or a practice run at Augusta, they all hit it really hard. And I'm not, and really high. Everything is off of, oh God, I don't know what they're called, the shot link, shot man, so
Yeah,
whatever it's called. I have never,
TrackMan.
I have never hit 50 balls with a TrackMan. I don't even want to know, because when I
Yes.
go play a par three, even when I was 35, I'd get up there and I didn't really know, this is going to sound crazy, but I didn't really know how hard I really wanted to swing a 6 or a 7-iron. So a TrackMan is basically telling you, 170, when I'm hitting the 7-iron, every time I hit, then you look at the machine and then you look at your numbers. You do want to know where the ball's going, and most of them hit it dead perfect, but most of it's a numbers thing. So when they got on the course, the caddy says, hey, 178. Well, that's a TrackMan 7-iron. So I get it all, but I got to be honest with you. When I was 35, I keep saying that number because that's in the middle of really my top playing. If I didn't know how far I was hitting a 7-iron, I should not be out there. But that's not a knock because they all use them. Every time you go to the range, each person has it lined up, but they're using it more for speed and numbers. And as you know, speed when I played was not ever really thought about. It was talked about by saying distance. It wasn't talked about the speed of his swing. Once in a while, they would say, my swing speed looks slow because I'm more nonchalant, or Ludwig A. Berg versus Nick Price, who has a fast swing, but it wasn't clubhead speed. It wasn't like I was getting more clubhead speed than Nick Price. That's why my swing looked different. Now, everyone's golf swing is beautiful. And I just relate the fact that I did have a great teacher in Paul Marchand when I started working with him. He's a college teammate in 1986. And we really worked on simple, easy things that I could understand. So I don't think I've really ever dug myself in a hole where I went home after working with Paul and saying, wow, I've lost it. Sometimes you can do silly things and lose your game.
Yeah. I listen, I'm by no means a golf swing expert, but I think one thing I always noticed about your swing, your game, I would bet that your grip pressure is probably the lowest on tour or very close to it. I mean, you hold that club very, very lightly.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer for that. There other guy that I think does, only because I've seen pictures of it, was VJ, and both of us way back when. You might even still have some. There are these magazines called Golf World, which were really top golf. It was about 30 pages, had a few ads, but it was all golf and scores. And so I was on the cover one time where my right hand was basically off the club, and VJ, probably the same year, if I remember right, they did the same thing and they showed him an impact. And then when I try and swing, I don't know if interlock helps. A lot of people are interlocking now because of Nicholas and Tiger. And they're 40 years apart and 30 years apart. And I don't know why interlock didn't catch on, but it did when Tiger started to become, the phenom at 21 and 2 and 3. But grip pressure for me was always important, to not grip it tight, because I had such a lazy swing. And going through the ball, that's when all hell broke loose. I mean, I just know the feeling that when I'm hitting a 3-iron or a driver, I'm going at it pretty hard. But my left hand would grip the club. It's always like I used to play a lot with George Brett, and he just texted me this morning, so his name's fresh. You see people, but in baseball, rarely do you ever see anyone where they're just gripping the bat. And George always was moving his fingers. And so I was relating, we were good friends a long time. We still are, but I was relating to the fact that, I like that. There are great waggles in golf, and there are other people, Chris, that they stand over the ball. And I don't know how they do that, but I'm not critiquing anyone, because I have a really strong grip. I have a different swing. It's just how I started. And you're correct. The pressure and the grip for me is very, very light.
Yeah, no, your swing, I mean, you're so modest. I got to ask you though, I mean, you've obviously seen your golf swing a lot. I mean, do you ever look at your swing and say, hey, it's pretty cool looking? Because obviously, and I realize you're very modest, but I mean, the world looks at your golf swing and you're like, wow, I mean, that is real. I mean, effortless power, right? How many times have people said that? I mean, it's just a really cool looking golf swing.
I've seen my swing more, and I worked with Butch Harmon for about 2 or 3 years too. So I'll throw Butch in there because I love Butch. But with Paul, I've seen my swing more on video, working with them, than so like Shell's matches. They're starting to come on TV right now at the beginning of the new year. I thought normally they're on Christmas, but they've shown Dan Sykes and they've shown Roberto DiVincenzo. This morning woke up and I was watching Crenshaw and Nicholas. So every now and then I'm on those. I've been played in 7 of them. So I'll watch a little of that. I have never seen any polls from the Players Championship or Augusta or the LA Open. I get a little gun shy when I see that stuff. I would rather see Davis Love or Adam Scott or any of my buddies, but I don't really watch my swing, and I don't travel like we're flying to Hawaii Sunday to play in the first Champions Tour event. I'm not. Some people, they take their computer, whatever a laptop, and they'll watch themselves just because it's something to do. I've never done it. I don't have any videos. As a matter of fact, my parents used to video every time I was on TV. I don't know what they're called. They're the old discs from the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
And so I found them in a box, and I threw them away because I hadn't looked at them in maybe 15 years, and we were moving. And Suzanne said, you can't throw those away. And I said, well, how are we going to play them? I said, there's no machine. And second of all, look at this one. It says that I hit an iron on one of the par 3s, and that's the only thing it says on there. So they videoed it for, an hour and a half on a Saturday, and they have me hitting an iron. So I'm not interested in that. I'm a real believer in other people. I love trying to figure out how Scotty Scheffler does that slide. And there are a couple of people who have sent me that. I bet I've looked at Scotty Scheffler swing 100 times in the last year, and I probably have looked at mine once. Kyle Berkshire, someone sent me him hitting a driver, and I sent it to my teacher, and he broke down the positions of where he was, and he goes, at impact, he's as good as anyone in the world. And I'm like, to me, being a smart aleck, well, Paul, he's hitting at 400 yards. He's got to be the same impact as Tiger Woods or Jack Nicklaus. Yeah, but he's going at it, 40% harder than they are. So it's not as easy. But I like listening to the sound of the ball. I have several of Tiger Woods, and just the sound of the ball is what I really can relate to. And during parts of the year, like on my birthday, I think they had me swinging 60 times, from the time I was in 1980. I do see that because people send it to me. I get a chuckle out of that, and it doesn't look much different. I'm more, my swing shorter. I'm more stiff, which we all know, but I still, because the way I swing, I still can play. And this is not anywhere. I'm not putting my name in the same sentence, but I used to watch Sam Snead at Augusta when he was in his 80s, and he'd walk on the range, and this is as true as it can be. I'm not going to say everyone stopped, but I'd say 50% of the people would stop and watch him hit balls.
Oh.
Just because of his syrupy, his length, and the way he hit the ball at 80. Lee Trevino still plays. Lee Trevino, Gary Player, they're amazing, but I don't swing like them. So I can't really relate to Lee Trevino except, the fact that I love the way he hits the ball, and I love Lee Trevino. So, but when I watch Sam Snead, wow. And then now I see Ludwig Aberg. I think his swing. There's another guy I watched at Century, Thomas Detry. He has got magic. His swing is just spectacular. I don't know him at all. I've watched him play a little bit, but I love that swing too.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's listen, I saw your swing recently, with your hybrids. It didn't look much different, maybe a little less speed, but I mean, it didn't look very different to me.
No, Chris, when I'm feeling, which is a lot of the time, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here, but when I hurt myself, then I know it's going to take a little while for my back to heal up, and I've been doing it the same way forever. I feel like my swing. So when I went to these hybrids, it was really basically because I hit them as far, and I hit them much easier than I started with. Really, I got rid of my 3-iron, and then I put in this 3 hybrid that I could hit the same amount of distance. And then I said, I'm never going to get rid of a 4-iron. And then I got rid of that. And now I have, I'm going to take it to Hawaii, but I haven't worked my 3 hybrid in because I have too many clubs. But the 4, 5, and 6 hybrids are so much easier. And I've told this to the guys that have made the clubs. If I had known this when I was 50, I really would have used them when I was 50 or 52 or 3. I didn't really think, waiting to 65. It was more that the power, I feel like the way they're built, I can get more club head speed. It might only be, instead of 97, it's 99 with a 5-iron. That gives me the distance, and I'm not hitting them way too far. I'm hitting them, if I was strong enough to hit 35 irons and I hit 30 of my 5 hybrids, they'd all be in the same spot. My big concern would be, in wind and trying to hit different shots. I just stand up with the 4, 5, and 6, and I just swing them. A lot of times when I'm hitting a 5-iron or a 4-iron, I'm trying to cut it in there, or I'm trying to drive it in low to get it and skip on the greens. And that's really helped me. This has been one of the nicest moves to make me feel like if I can stay healthy this year. I mean, 1 shot a day is huge. It's probably bigger on the regular tour than it is on the Champions Tour, because we really only get 3 rounds. And the Champions Tour, you've got to shoot some incredible scores, which you can do. But these clubs are going to help me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Freddie, I've got some local knowledge here. I've got a good story for you. This is really good, especially given the role that money is played in today's game with the players. When you won the Masters in '92, do you remember what logo was on the left front side of your Ashworth shirt?
Yes, I had a Miami Marlins logo. and that's a great story. You want to keep going, but how do you know about that?
All right, I'll give a little intro, and I'll let you tell the rest of the story. So I'm good friends down here with Don Smiley, who was president of the Marlins, Don played a huge role along with legendary businessman Wayne Huizenga in bringing baseball to Miami with the Florida Marlins beginning in 1993. I will just say that I guess you played in a pro-am with him at the Honda, and I'll leave it at that.
Your story is probably the most legit of anyone that knows a story that's ever said, "Hey, you have 2 minutes, I have a story for you." That is exactly correct. So I played with Don and Wayne at the Honda, and we were kind of giggling, and the Marlins were fresh. And so I don't really know what Don did at that time. He was a young man. You know, he was kind of helping with the Marlins, and so they made these shirts up. And so I'm wearing them at Augusta. And I wish Paul Marchand was sitting next to me, because then he would finish the story and say, "Listen, I am not going to let you wear a Marlins shirt on Sunday when you win." And so I didn't. And to be honest with you, the Pro-Am was in Honda's in March, maybe. So Don
Yeah.
got me these logos as fast as he could. It's not like I had 30 logoed Marlin shirts, but I had enough to get through. So I didn't wear it on Sunday. But then lo and behold, it comes out on Sports Illustrated and they have the Marlin shirt. Now here's where you need to bump into Don or call him and say, "I believe there were maybe some plane rides that you were supposed to give." I didn't get, when I say I didn't get anything, I might be wrong on that. Maybe I got a ticket to a Marlin game, but I didn't wear it much after that. I don't think. I really don't know if I kept wearing the Marlin logo, but I thought it was really fun and cool, because at that time I didn't have a sponsor on my left chest, and I'm a baseball nut, and that's just how it worked. And I said, "You get me shirts and I'll wear them." But it's on every Sports Illustrated ever made. So I've not seen Don, but tell him hello and tell him, just a couple flights on that plane. I think that's what he said. But it's a great story, and
That is really,
that's
yeah,
how I
no,
wore the Marlin logo. But again, Paul, not putting any added pressure, goes, I'm not letting you wear that logo when you're not going to wear a Marlins logo when you win Augusta. So I
that,
wore a regular Ashworth shirt.
Freddie, that's awesome. Don told me that they cut a deal for you guys that you would play at the Players Championship in it and the Masters. And I
Okay.
remember I said to him, I said, "Well, you had to have paid him something, right?" And he said, "No." He said, "Freddie didn't want any money." But
Right.
now you're telling me that possibly there were a couple of private
Well,
jets.
I mean, look, in those years, I'm trying to think. I started this, Nick Price had a plane, Norman had a plane, obviously Arnold Palmer, Ray Floyd, but I started buying hours. I don't know what year, but it was the greatest deal ever. And I did it with Beach Jet. I lived in Dallas, but I'm bouncing around. But getting back to that, I'm pretty sure he said, "Yeah, we'll fly you a couple places and all that." Because, I lived in Wellington, which isn't far from, where they were all from. But no, that's probably it. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do when we're done. I have a couple people I can call, and I'm going to see if I wore it at the TPC. I really don't know, but that sounds legit.
Yeah.
And those would be two tournaments that are very close together. I mean, I think the TPC way back then was in March before Augusta. So, boy, I might have worn it there, but I'm going to find out, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, it's funny. Don had told me, he said, "Yeah," he goes back and forth between Milwaukee and South Florida. And he said, "I've got a picture in my house in Milwaukee of Freddie, who's the cover of Sports Illustrated." So I Googled it and saw it. And, yeah, you can tell it's the Marlins logo there. So, I mean, that was amazing exposure for those guys. They were actually starting up the next year. So, I mean, it was a great prelim. But I'm going to see Don later today, so we'll have a
Okay.
little
Well,
discussion. I
yeah.
was going to suggest that he owes you some money, but it sounds like maybe they owe you some plane rides.
No, 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 no. Don would know exactly. And Wayne was right there. And by the way, Wayne was such a great person to all the golfers. And it just seemed like a no-brainer. It seemed really, and to be honest with you, you are right. So it wasn't like April was their first year. It was a full year ahead.
Yeah.
And you know, that's how I am. I didn't need him. I didn't need my agent to call and say, what are you doing? Because I think Don is right. It was a couple weeks thing, and let's just have fun with it. And then, you know, and you can tell Don probably already knows, but that's that's partly why he didn't wear it on Sunday of Augusta, but I wore it the first 3 rounds. And you know how funny that Sports Illustrated took one of the shots in that shirt and put it on their cover, because that was a blessing.
That was no, it's a great story. I mean, amazing credit to you. And Don certainly told me to you know, say hello and to thank you again
Yeah.
once again for doing that. So
No,
it's really a great story.
Don's a good man. I didn't know him well, but we had a lot of laughs. I can tell you that much. We had a lot of what the hell just happened. So, and I haven't seen him. I mean, that's, I don't know when the last time I saw Don. It's been a long, because I don't play Milwaukee,
Yeah.
and we don't have any tournaments on the Champions Tour. Well, we're close. We're close, Madison, but I haven't seen him in a while. But I hope he's doing really, really well.
Yeah, he's doing great. He's
Good.
doing great. No, it's a great story. And Don knew that I was going to be speaking with you, and he kind of gave me the heads up. He said, "You got to ask it." And then when I saw the picture of the Sports Illustrated cover, I said, "Boy, that's classic how it all worked out."
No, it really was.
Freddie, you gave me a huge assist when I interviewed Jim Nantz. I had watched your interview from several months ago on The Scoop with Claire Rogers. And you discussed how legendary Houston golf coach Dave Williams would so frequently declare that Jim would be president of the United States one day and outshine all the Houston stud golfers who would go out and succeed on the tour. It's funny, in our discussion, I will say that Jim really enjoyed reflecting back on Coach Williams' insistence that he would one day be president. It was pretty funny.
You know, people talk about our relationship, and I will tell you this, that, well, first, we already all know that there's no one like Jim Nantz. There's no one like him. But for him to be on our golf team, and for me to be, we were called suite mates. You know, he and Blaine McAllister were in a room, and John Horn and I, and we shared a shower and a bathroom. But the fact that, I know this is going to sound crazy, I was not very good in school at all. But the fact that Jim Nantz got up every day, and again, it's trivial stuff, but got ready for class, and I got ready for class. I tried to take a couple classes he was in communications. It was so much over my head. But the idea that he was on the team as a freshman, which is, you know, anyone will tell you, is I was 17 for August, September, October 3rd was my birthday. So I was a 17-year-old punk. All I want to do is play golf. I mean, I barely got C's. I went to an all boys Catholic school, so it was not easy, but I barely got C's. I got into U of H, probably on a whim. Coach Williams probably helped. And then meeting Jim was like, wow. And then Coach Williams, so Jim was there in the summer. His family moved. So he spent some time with Coach Williams. And it didn't take long for Coach to say, you know, he always said, my boys, you know, you're all going to be great golfers. Everyone that comes to Houston is a great golfer. But this is Jim Nantz. He's going to be president one day. And, you know, when you're 17, I don't know who Jim Nantz is from Adam, right? Well, then he started to become this guy that he, with Guy Lewis, he was doing the Sunday morning show, hosting it. And he, you know, and he's our roommate, and I'm staring at him. His hair was perfect, and he's interviewing. And then later on, you know, he's interviewing Muhammad Ali and Nolan Ryan and Warren Moon and Bum Phillips and J.R. Richard, anyone who was in Houston. And so he was working for, and I'm stupid, API, the radio, and he was selling his interviews. And so, right, but he kind of, but I'm going to say this, and I don't think he would probably argue or agree, but, you know, he wasn't telling us because he was getting paid. So here we are, you know, I didn't have any money. I was sleeping with a blanket, and John Horn, my roommate, didn't have a whole lot of money either. And I'm not saying we were poor, but here's Jim, you know, selling a clip of Muhammad Ali, which he should get, kind of like TMZ today. And so he was making money. And it was amazing. And his career just kept going and going and going. And like you say, there's no one. I love Dan Hicks. I tell Dan Hicks all the time, you and Rowdy Gaines at the Olympics in swimming, there's no one better. But Dan, I got my man Jim Nantz, and he's the all-time best. So Hicks he'll really laugh. I've never met Rowdy Gaines. I've never texted Rowdy Gaines, but I text Dan on that because I love the Olympics. I love swimming. But Jim Nantz is such an amazing I bet you had the most fun doing your interview with Jim. He's amazing.
You know, he says, you talk about amazing. Those are my words. He said something really amazing about you that day. And this is such a low tech environment. Give me 30 seconds and I'm gonna set up a clip for you.
Well, he dressed up for this interview, huh?
Absolutely. Nothing but the best for me.
70s, and we remain that way today. So I'm proud of all three of my roomies equally, but in Freddie's case, to see him be able to achieve not only a green jacket victory, but also a Hall of Fame recognized career, it's one of the great joys of my life, to be honest. I saw how much he wanted it when we were kids. He knew how much I wanted to be a part of the television broadcast of the Masters. That was the real draw for me as a young boy, was that one show. That's the one that really inspired me to want to be in the business. And here we were with both with dreams that would land if they were going to come to fruition. They were going to land at the same place, Augusta National Golf Club.
Right.
And we were fortunate that in our 20s, those chances came true to compete there for Freddie, to broadcast there for me. And then it became truly only a matter of time until that little scene played out that we used to practice, not every day, not every month, but a couple of times in school. We play acted, dreamed, kids, pretended, whatever you want to call it. We rehearsed that green jacket ceremony. And now on April the 12th, 1992, that ceremony actually happened for real. And we weren't sitting in our dorm room anymore, and the world was watching. So that to me is the biggest, of my broadcasting career, that's the biggest thrill.
Well, I mean, there you go, Chris. That is Jim Nantz. That is, you know, he's an incredible human being, and he's told me several times what that meant to him. And I got to be honest with you. I had seen the Butler cabin interviews and ceremonies, and when I walked in there, I literally, I was done. And, you know, I never really looked at him. I think Manny Zerman was, I shouldn't say, I think Manny Zerman was the low am. So I kept staring at him. And then finally, you know, Jim asked me a question, and when we got through it, I just completely lost it. And there were so many things. I bet if he asked me what I did on the 14th hole that day, I wouldn't even been able to answer it.
Yeah.
You know, and you hear people all the time, you know, give me a minute to think about this. Well, they walk you from the 18th green through thousands of patrons screaming at you, and then you walk right into this room, and all of a sudden you go, bam, here we are. And so he first of all, it was great. It was the greatest thing probably that's ever happened to me, not only winning, but then being interviewed by Jim. And that's as good as it's ever gotten. And he told me one time, he says, you know, boy, it seems like a lot of the tournaments you win are on CBS. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's pot luck. I haven't won that many, but I've won enough. And so we laugh about that. But one quick story real fast on Jim, and then we'll get on to other subjects. So I lost in the U.S. Amateur in the quarterfinals to Hal Sutton in North Carolina. And my plane ticket was supposed to go from there to school, and it didn't. And so then I went back, and my parents or my mother was calling our dorm room over and over, and Jim was answering the phone. Mrs. Couples, you know, he's not here right now. He's out with Blaine, or, you know, he's lying. And so several years went by, and I turned pro that week. And I'll be honest, I don't even think anyone knew except for people at the Queen Mary Open, because I was just a punk 20-year-old. And when Jim Nantz used to go do NCAA games or football games in Seattle, not every time, but he would take my mother out for a quick lunch,
That's awesome.
basically because he felt so bad for lying to her for probably a week. I think it's all it took, because once I turned pro, I played in this tournament. I called Sunday night, but that's what kind of man Jim Nantz is. And my mom used to just get such a big kick out of it. My father was working all the time, but my mom could squeeze away, and that's what Jim Nantz is all about. I could go on 100 stories, but he is correct. In the dorm rooms, we used to sit there, and like he said, it wasn't every other week, but we'd call it roll our eyes. Okay, well, now it's your turn. Come on in, and you've just won the Masters, and and then I guess that would be 1979 or 80. What is that? That's 12 years later. We're doing it, and he's a professional, and I'm a professional. It's kind of weird. I don't know of too many things that I can relate to um, with my college career that are that good. I love Blaine McAllister. He just texted the other day, worried about us with the fires. John Horn, not as much, but Jim Nantz all the time.
Yeah, yeah. He was. It was a great interview that day. Jim was in a really, really reflective mood that day, and but we commented. It is pretty amazing, right? I mean, you guys are at the University of Houston. Actually bringing something like that to fruition. It's just an amazing story, and it's really, really was great to see.
Well, it's not about everybody, but real quick, people, when they say your roommates were who again? Jim Nantz, I know. And I said, well, my roommate was John Horn and then Blaine McAllister. And people say, oh, I know that name. Well, Blaine McAllister won 5 times on the PGA Tour. Blaine
Yes,
McAllister could really play golf.
yes.
And so, in our foursome there, we have 20 wins. So John Horn has 0, Jim Nantz has 0, but Blaine and I have covered the 4 of us. But I would not. I think I can say this: if Jim Nantz wasn't on our team and he wasn't part of my life there, I probably wouldn't have made it. School was so over my head, Chris. It was just, I could go into a class, and I could sit there and I could listen, but I just couldn't. And it's not like, you've seen a lot of, it's not like all I want to do is play golf. I just
Yeah.
thought school was like, maybe I just paid attention. I heard people talk about my father because he was a great baseball player in high school. He barely got through high school. And that's why they were really so mad on Sunday when I called them after I turned pro and played in the Queen Mary, is they wanted me to get an education. And the University of Houston did everything they could to give me that, but I didn't really let them.
Listen, it worked out pretty well, Freddie, right? It worked out.
That's the bottom line. It worked out well.
But sometimes mom and dad things do work out. They have
Yeah.
the best of intentions, without a doubt. Let me, as long as we're talking about Augusta, let me ask you a quick question. So a good friend of mine through the golf television business, Mark Loomis. Produced the golf for ABC, ESPN, and then Fox. And I was talking to Mark about speaking with you. And what was interesting was on the 12th hole on Sunday, your ball stayed on the bank, and it's amazing. You took all the drama out of it immediately by, chipping it up to about a foot and tapping it in, and it was, let's move on. But after you hit that chip, you saw a ball in the water and you kind of picked it up with your club and you flipped it up on the bank. And Mark and I were saying it almost looked like you were saying, let me see if this ball stays on the bank or goes down in the water.
Well,
And,
well,
I'm sure there were a million things going through your mind at that point, but do you remember that?
oh, yes, I do. And that's exactly. So my ball was, it hit so low on the bank, and there was a little bit, we call it fluff rough, but it didn't pick up any speed. So it stayed. And so, and yes, I did. So that ball literally was a foot under the water there in murky water. It wasn't like clean, you could see it. But when I flipped it out, it was so there were only 4 of us that used a max fly ball back then. It was Ian Woosnam, myself, Nicholas, and boy, I would say Nicholas, but maybe not at that time. And when I flipped it out, it was actually a max fly, the same number, and it was Ian Woosnam's ball.
No kidding.
Not,
Wow.
no doubt. But I did flip it out, and it stayed. And you know, and I don't know what I did with it. I don't know if I hit it. I honestly don't know. But that was my reaction. And all I could think of walking. You know, there's a shot that God is my witness, I've never seen. I've never seen it. I've seen the chip shot because they'll show it periodically, but I've never seen the swing. It wasn't a bad swing. It was mental, bad. The mentality of what I was trying to accomplish there was awful. And it was just pushed, but it wasn't, you know, I've seen balls fly in the middle of the lake. I actually went through a stretch where I kind of struggled on the hole. And then after that, the hole doesn't really scare me that much because it really fits my eye. But on that particular shot, I was really thinking, not stuffing it in there, but I wasn't thinking what a lot of people tend to think and hit. You know, the one year when Tiger won, there was Finau, Brooks, Molinari. I think 3 or 4 guys in a row hit it in the water. You know, it can happen, and mine just stayed up, which was a blessing.
It was. Now, when you flipped up that other ball and it was a max fly, the same number, did you have a quick thought go through your brain like, hey, did I just play the right ball?
Well, I mean, yeah, you know, it could have been a tie. It could have been any ball.
Yeah.
But when I flipped it out, you know, it had Woozy on it. It was a max fly. And like I say, back then, you know, there weren't many people, and I use this. That was their program, was not to sign up a ton of people, but get the best people they could.
Yeah.
And it was Woozy's ball, and it was a max fly. It was so bizarre. But that day was one that you know, at Augusta, you go from not nervous to extremely nervous. And there are some shots that like some people play, you know, how do you play the first hole? First hole is one of my favorite holes. The 17th hole, I can't play. The 11th hole, I struggle on. I don't know why. They're very hard holes. But then you pick out another hole, you know, the 5th hole, I've played pretty well. A lot of people bogey it all the time. But at Augusta, you know, you're going around. But to be honest with you, you know, when I got to the 12th tee, and I could write a short book, it'd be a paragraph, but when I got up there, I told myself, okay, all you really got to do is hit one. It was an 8-iron in my hand. It was no wind. All you got to do is hit one shot and this thing's over. Well, meanwhile, you know, after that, I got 6 more holes to play. But that was in my thought because I knew I could play 13 and 15 and 14 and maybe struggle on a hole or two. But at that time, that's what I thought. And so, you know, I do that a lot. Sometimes I try and hit too good a shot, and I think mentally that's fine. But in this instance, it was more all I have to do, you know, it's a 72 hole tournament, and all I have to do is hit this ball on the green. Well, and I didn't. And I got very lucky, and I hit it, you know, under the circumstances, a really nice little pitch shot up the hill and close. But it could have been a disaster. I mean, and then once I got through there, to be honest with you, if you ever look back, Ray Floyd had made a chip shot on 14 that was so bizarre. It went, he left it short of the green, it went down, and it was a roar you know, you've never heard. And I don't know if he got within 1 or 2, but I think I birdied 13. But then I told this too. I immediately went, oh, because I was playing with Craig Perry, who was struggling. But the fact that Ray Floyd, who had helped me a lot, been a Ryder Cup captain, was now charging and getting close to me, kind of settled me down. And then I played pretty well. I think I birdied 14, maybe not 13. and then parred in and won by a couple. But it was a really great experience.